Welcome back to the Zachrilege cast, Bryce Blankenagel.
Man. Hi, Zach.
Hey there. So I missed Bryce's third anniversary of Naked Mormonism. I've had him on for the first and the second. So as a late gift offering, and I don't think Mormons do burn offerings, I have a surprise before we discuss the original Captain Marvel, Joseph Smith. So for this show, I'm going to ignore my run sheet and ask all questions that come to me from this, my special hat. It's a special hat. It's not a magical hat. There we go. And I didn't have a seer stone, so I have a baseball that I got in a minor league game in Nashville 25 years ago. So here we go. Okay, on Urim, on Thurman, Mecca Lekahai, Mecca Heine Ho. I speak English good. Okay, Bryce, the hat has some important questions for you, but my wife found them and burned them. So because of that, my hat is just a hat. Can we just start the interview now?
Man, first off, if you need a seer stone, you can borrow mine. I'll expedite it, send it over your way. Original, authentic looking seer stone, unearthed from the mails near my house. And second, you are clearly using an incorrect hat and therefore seer stone, and therefore the revelation was not divinely authorized, and therefore it is good that it was burned by your wife. So yes. Yeah, so no. It's I think we're operating, we're operating with the sanctions of the higher authorities here. I think we're good. Yeah, let's do this. Let's do this interview. How you feeling, man?
It's good that we burned that audio. Well, first of all, tonight, do you have the one true beer?
I have the Vori plates of the one true beer. So yeah, what are you drinking tonight, man?
Well, this is the official show drink, the Dragon's Milk, with the official mug, because there's a special gift set with the mugs. So
you are way more high class than I am, because I'm drinking straight from the can, not even from a bottle, but from a can. I know. So I am personally an amber ale fan. I used to work in Fort Collins, just a stone's throw away from the New Belgium plant, and that is where I acquired my craft brew beer palette for Fat Tire. Fat Tire, hands down, the best amber ale. But unfortunately, I'm going with a different degree of authority with a New Belgium still, but this is called the Dayblazer, and it is a golden ale. So it's a little bit lighter than the amber ale, not as high bitter or alcohol units, but it's really tasty and a really nice, like, hanging out with friends kind of beer. Pairs very well with barbecue chicken, I found out.
There are plenty of quality beers for that, because this is a very heavy, this is take your time to drink, although it'll probably be gone halfway through the show. But we'll start with the out of context quotes, although the first one is actually for me from our first interview.
Oh no. Okay.
Tomorrow is Thanksgiving, and we know what that means. That's when the Nephites give Joseph Smith his first lightsaber.
Yeah. Yep.
And from you can get the same performance out of a smaller package.
It's not about the size of the seer stones. It's about the potency of them. Yeah. I don't even see, this is a problem, is you invited me onto the show and you did prep work and didn't tell me any of what you were planning or what you were doing or the opening sketch with the whole seer stone in the hat. Yes. And I didn't go back and listen, so I have no idea what context those were even said in, but also at the same time, I don't doubt that they were said. So yeah. Okay, fair enough.
That might have been from your last week on Beyond the Trailer Park, and we'll get to kind of Beyond the Trailer Park talk as we move through. Mm-hmm. But of course, you might as well have Mormon or Book of Mormon, kind of tattooed on your forehead, because it's kind of what you're known for. So you are the host of which podcasts now?
So I do Naked Mormonism. What was that?
Or co-host.
Or co-host, yeah. So I do Naked Mormonism. That's the serialized history of Mormonism and Joseph Smith's early ministry. I also do my Book of Mormon podcast, which is reading through Mormon scripture. I co-host that with my co-host Marie, and we're having a good time. We just finished reading through all the non-canonized revelations. Those are the revelations that Joseph gave, but were not actually put into the scripture. And after that, we're going to move on to the RLDS scripture, which it's interesting if you know the history a little bit, but it doesn't mean anything when I just say it here. And then I also co-host the Glass Box podcast, which kind of evolved out of doing a headline segment on Naked Mormonism. I realized that there's just too much good, interesting content coming out of the Mormon newsroom mill, so I just kind of broke that off and spawned it into its own podcast. So that's where I do headlines about the church and in and out of the church, actually. So yeah, three podcasts.
So the Glass Box, is that where you keep your weed since you're in the state of Washington where it's legal?
It's glass, so you can see through it. There's no questions what's in there. Yeah, totally. It's more like a glass jar than a box, but it still works.
I didn't know if there was an official like reference there to Mormon.
Super deep Mormon history reference. It's where Joseph Smith kept his golden plates at the time he was translating them.
Oh, well, Glass Box. So you know where you're. Do you put, was it like a bookmark for that? I don't even know. The plates. He found the plates.
He folded the metal corner down just to, he dog-eared the metal plates. Keep his place.
So Naked Mormonism, you're doing from the beginning of Joseph Smith's life through, well, we'll see how far you get. Where are you currently in, I guess, the timeline?
Yeah, Joseph Smith lived till he was 39 years old. He was running the church for 14 years before he was assassinated, and I'm currently at 1 year before the assassination. And it's fun, it's complicated, it's crazy, it's most importantly, it is just fascinating to watch how somebody rises to the level of a demagogue and just watch the formation of a character, like a true rags to riches American dream demagogue of, somebody who was trying to be a revolutionary, a religious revolutionary, and scorch the earth of the American soil and build his theocracy, rising from the ashes like a theocratic phoenix. So it's just weird to watch that evolution happening and to see, let's just say, certain patterns revealing themselves within the sphere of politics in our current day and throughout our history. So I think, history is fun, but it's a lot more fun when you use it comparatively to understand the world that we currently live in.
Yeah, it's true that in America, it's like, well, we never had a king, even though some of the original founders were kind of like, maybe we should have a king, but we do like ourselves some demagogues.
Yeah.
Do you think, I don't know if this is like totally tangent right here, but I don't know, do you get into any kind of like alternate history? I'm wondering if anybody has ever penned an alternate history where like Joseph Smith actually like becomes president and like king of the United States, because it doesn't seem like it would be terribly too far from reality.
What is the, hang on 1 second, I gotta look at my bookshelf here.
It does exist. It's real and it's amazing. Naked Mormon Studios, everybody. You wonder what he's digging up back there, but it's okay. It's all good.
All right. Sorry, everybody listening, watching, for the silence there. So there's this book called Midnight at Nauvoo by John W. Taylor, and it's essentially a fictionalized history of Nauvoo in kind of like a Work in the Glory style. But he doesn't go quite so far as to like say that Joseph Smith wasn't assassinated and like create an alternate timeline, but he like creates a fictionalized family and narrative that went through actual historical events in Nauvoo. And it's a really compelling book. It's a compelling fiction that's based, loosely on history. But as far as like a complete alternate history, I don't know if that's ever been written. And if it hasn't, there's something deeply flawed with our society, because that would just be amazing. Because I mean, he was running for president, man. Him getting elected would have been, oh wow, wow. American history would be so much different had that happened.
I mean, I do. I don't know. You're getting into, I guess, a little bit of the gam realm for Mormon movies, but there isn't really a mainstream. Like the only thing was a Big Love, which was on HBO, but that was kind of a modern version of Mormonism. You know, with someone who is
Yeah.
a polygamist, but it does kind of get into these like little splinter groups. But the actual history, and then the history that Joseph Smith made up, the real history is just as fine. So yeah, the problem is that you go, no, Bryce is more than Mormonism, but you go, I mean, it's so cool, you know. We don't talk about it that often. I think he may have been. I maybe have one or two other ex-Mormons who've been on the show ever. So you know, it's refreshing and interesting.
Fun of it. Part of the fun is disentangling the fact from the fiction, and doing so in itself is an academically enriching endeavor. But regardless of where you are, whether or not you believe in the church, whether you believe in God or not, or any amount of gods, Mormon history is just fun. And like, I can't remember. I think it was No Illusions who coined this term, but he called it fractal bullshit, where it's just everything that you know or you've heard about Mormon history, there's always more layers that make it even wackier and crazier that you never would expect. But, you know, finding out the real history behind the fun little gotchas about Mormon history, about the rock and the hat and stuff. Man, like we could spend hours doing it. I do spend hours doing it. That's why I made a podcast about it.
Exactly. I mean, there is a very extended alternate history in which like the South wins a civil war, and then like Utah becomes like a breakaway country, and they actually are like constantly at war trying to get them into the fold. And they're doing all these like modern terrorist tactics, which I'm like, yeah, it could happen. I mean,
oh yeah,
things possible. I mean, that is true. So have we ever talked about the musical, The Book of Mormon, and your thoughts? Or I mean, it's been a little while.
Referenced it. I think we talked about it on the first episode, or the first time I came on here. Am I remembering that correctly?
Because I just saw, in my very citation needed light version of research that there was like a mention. It was like a Mormon like thing, like, the one of the creators of South Park who was behind the Book of Mormon dated a Mormon girl, and he should just get over it. And I'm like, no, the stuff they did was really good. Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. The thing is if anyone who, okay, so when I went and saw the Book of Mormon the first time, I went with my sister, with her fiance, and with my girlfriend, who is now, at the time, who is now my fiance. So my current brother-in-law, my fiance, they're never Mormon, but my sister and I grew up Mormon. So while we were sitting there, all of us were laughing at the jokes. My sister and I were dying, side-splitting laughter, because the deeper Mormon references and the homage that they pay to Mormon culture and what it's really like in Mormonism, it's spot on. They hit the nail right on the head, and it's obvious they did their homework. So, like, sure, get over it, whatever. No, Mormonism is fun. It's really fun to poke fun at. And, like, if you do your homework, if you do it right, the creators of South Park, like, they did it right, both with the South Park episode and with My Book of Mormon, and with Orgasmo, having the missionaries show. Have you seen the movie Orgasmo?
I did see it. Yeah, it was like one of their early movies. What was it? A Mormon guy?
Yeah, missionaries.
He gets into porn, but then he has a stand-in for the sex scene.
Bring in the stunt cock. Yeah, it's exactly it. It's an amazing movie, and it's the whole premise of it is like these two missionaries go tracting and knock on the studio or a porn studio's door and try to proselytize, and like even just the little subtle references that they give to like Mormon missionary culture there, it's brilliant. Everything about it is absolutely brilliant. And yeah, I mean, the Book of Mormon musical is no slouch when it comes to those deeper Mormon history or deeper Mormon cultural references, I should say.
Yeah, I think I remember because a friend of mine like burned a CD with the music and it was Hasa Diga Ibowai. That was just like, oh my God. But really, in the end, it isn't like being super mean. It's kind of like telling the truth, but it's also like, yeah, Mormons are usually pretty nice.
Yeah, right.
Here's what they believe and why. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what you have to deal with. Like last weekend, I went to a Catholic confirmation with my nephew, and it's like everybody in this room is really, really nice. They probably all voted for Trump, but they're really, really nice people, and they
Right.
probably haven't read the entire Bible and don't really understand it. But it's a
Yep.
nice place to go every week, and people are friendly, and you have this community, and it's good. But when you look into it, yeah, it doesn't really add up as much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of I would say that's a pretty general theme when it comes to most religious beliefs, right? That's why that's why you do a show about atheism and skepticism. That's why I do a show that's based on the predications of skepticism and atheism, because it's like, yeah, once you strip away the bullshit, it's a lot easier to truly understand what you're dealing with.
Now, do you get tired of getting kind of Mormon questions and being the Mormon expert? I mean, you've been
No.
doing a show for, I don't know, 5 years now, four, something like that.
4.5, yeah. No. Well, because I'll say, I talk with people who like listen to the show pretty frequently, interact with them online and whatnot, and that's fun. But all that they know of Mormon history really is like maybe having read Rough Stone Rolling or No Man Knows My History or something like that, and then listen to the show. They don't study it to the level that I study it. So when I'm able to get into a conversation with people who know nothing about it, the questions like we sit at kind of like the base level of like fun Mormon history facts. And then there's like the lower level where like the main biographies of Joseph Smith and the main historiographies of Mormonism throughout different periods are. And then like there's the entire level below, like as like the ground floor that kind of buttresses all of those other levels. That is where the real history happens, and that comes from reading the initial sources and reading the arguments and the reviews that historians are having with other historians. And very few people who I ever interact with are actually doing that. So it provides an opportunity for me to reveal how fun Mormon history is when people ask me questions at any of those levels about Mormon history. But I'm always excited to jump into a conversation at any of those levels, because it's a passion of mine, and I don't know how to say it. It's something I'm very passionate about, and it's something I enjoy, and it's something I literally do every single day. So yeah, no, I can never get sick of it.
So you're able to keep Mormonism fresh.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. I don't know
When I
how,
made
but it is.
a random reference to the Vori plates, and you're like, oh, I got this.
Well, and you asked a good question
I
of
read one Wikipedia article, and every single like click within that article, you knew all the details. So anyway, yeah.
well, the Vori plates are so much fun, and you asked a good question that I don't know the answer to, and that's, has anybody ever claimed to have discovered the Vori plates? And like they published, the Strangites published, and
We
a
will
little
have to go
background.
back and explain. Yeah, what are
Yeah.
the Vori plates? And that's not Jason from Friday the 13th, right? No.
No, no, it's not. No, it's not. The mask and everything. No, so the Vori, so the Strangites were a branch off of Mormonism after Joseph's death in 1844. This guy James Strang, said, "I have a letter from Joseph Smith saying I'm the next true prophet," and a little less than half of the Mormons were like, "Yeah, we'll go with that guy." So they did, and this guy, he moved all of the Mormons up, or all of his Mormons up, to a little place called Beaver Island, and that is where he Beaver Island, right? And near Beaver Island is this little town called Vori, where they claim to have found a set of plates similar to the way that the Book of Mormon plates are found. But what's cool is he had actual signatories of people who were there and unearthed the plates with him. that said that we the undersigned, we have seen the plates, we unearthed them, we found them at this location underneath a tree branch. And like they it's a lot more believable of a story than the gold plates are anyway. And so they published transcripts and like picture plates of the actual Vori plates, but I don't think that they have ever actually been discovered, or I don't know the fate of them. But the Strangite movement is super interesting, and it's just as interesting as the Joseph Smith Mormonism, and it still has followers in it today. One of them I consider a good friend of mine is Bill Shepard. I've had him on the podcast before talking about the Hodge murders in Nauvoo. He's a Strangite historian, a lifelong believer in the Strangite church, and like it's all just so wacky and delusional and fun, and it only becomes a problem when you're studying these things when you realize that people believe in the claims of what these people are saying. And Strang is fun because, I mean, he was like started out anti-polygamy, and then he just started showing up with some extra wives, and then gave them a dress code of like big foofy dresses probably to hide their pregnancies. And like he would mix up anointing oil in their temple ceremonies with phosphorus and then turn out the lights in the temple, or blow out the candles, and then when they pour the oil over their heads would glow, and that they thought that they were like endowed with the spirit, but it turns out he was just mixing up phosphorus in the oil. And like it's so wacky, it's so crazy, it's so fun. And like, dude, there's no end to the rabbit holes. It is a black hole of a rabbit hole of history.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you see that and you think, oh, this guy had a plate, and they actually like showed the plates, as opposed to Joseph Smith, who had people sign to say that they saw them, but nothing existed. And then it adds to the mystery, like the plates disappeared. I mean, according to the Wikipedia I read, which of course is totally true, it was around 1900. Yes, they disappeared, but it's possible someday. And then they said they were just like, looked like a tea kettle that the guy did.
Yeah,
and
pretty much.
Have a dog pickup, let me know. I understand.
What is interesting is
when you're a podcaster, it's all glorious.
Well, with the plates themselves, the way that they were discovered is they were like found underneath a hollow in a tree, and the soil hadn't been disturbed around the tree. So the people who unearthed them were like, oh my God, how did these get here? They must be authentic, because we can't find any evidence that the soil's been disturbed. But somebody found the auger that Strang had used in order to bore into the hillside and bury the plates underneath there. And then, oops. Oops, right? A little oversight. So like, yeah, I mean, it's like these little things of, just these B grade magicians and jugglers, like just conning people at the most basic level, but the people buy into it and they make money as a religious cult leader, and it's fine. It's all fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah, I think becoming a religious like cult leader might be a better move than a podcast host. We got to think about that.
It depends on where your ethics are and stuff.
We are assholes who are bad at marketing, something like that. That's what we are. If we had better at marketing, we would have sycophants who would do our bidding, and that would probably be bad. So good.
Yeah. Depends on what your bidding is, really.
My bidding is give me more beer. That kind of thing.
Exactly.
Amber ale for all. Come on. Bryce likes it okay because it's copper and delightsome. No, that's
copper and delightsome. Yeah, that's not dark and loathsome like the stout you're drinking.
Correct. Yes, that is true. But it could change because it'll be empty and then it'll be see-through.
Yeah.
So we've kind of seen our community go through a lot of changes since we
for sure
got involved in the podcast part, at least in 2014, 2015. So we need to take a moment to think about the podcasters who've left us, frankly, because we suck or they have lives or whatever. We also have podcasters who are no longer with us on this moral plane. So when did you find out about Deb McTaggart dying, and what, how did this affect you?
Yeah, Deb dying was that was kind of a tough one, and it was really cool to see all of the people show up for the memorial show for her. I learned about it the day it happened. I was told by a friend, and then I went over to her Facebook page and saw posts from everybody and yeah, that was a little bit tough. Primarily because Deb was just somebody who's done her homework in many respects, right? So for Coronify Me, the last time I had her on my show, she was, getting Coronify Me started. No, sorry, not Coronify Me, full Coronic. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
She was getting full Coronic started, and in order to do so, she read one of the biographies of Muhammad, and we talked for like 45 minutes about the similarities between Muhammad and Joseph Smith, because she had also read some of the Joseph Smith biographies as well. So she's one of those people who I could actually talk with, those planes that I said earlier, like, she was somebody who knew some of the foundational level stuff, and we could talk that foundational level history, and she was able to expand on her thoughts of it and not just consume what I'm telling her about it. She was able to like rebound with ideas of her own, and because she's somebody who just did her homework, and she's one of the few people in the atheist community who I was able to do that with. So um yeah, her losing Deb was really losing a major force for good in this community in many ways, and it was hard. It's still something I'm a little upset about. I'm a little bit bitter about, just because it was so sudden and so unexpected, and everybody loves Deb. She was a great person. But you tell me your side of it now. How did you find out?
I think it was about the same. I think I saw somebody mention something on Facebook, and I'm probably was one of those in denying, like, that's not true. And then because I remember reading it, like she was about to get married,
Yeah.
and she had the new podcast. Of course, in the history of Deb, she was one of. I mean, I feel like she was on the show like 5 times, and it was every single time was a totally different show.
Right.
And the Full Chronic was a good show, and I was like, God, I feel bad for all those young, like Muslim guys who would always like hit on her and say, I don't care if you're married, you can marry me too. It's like, that's part of your religion.
Yeah.
But they would like argue with her in a way. But yeah, the and we have lost a ton of people who have done really good stuff. I mean, you think about it, it's like just showing up sometimes is a big deal in podcasting,
Yeah.
but people disappear because their lives change. People disappear because they're not with us. And Deb just, I mean, I saw her last year at NanoCon. It was like, oh, I'm going to NanoCon this year, and she won't be there. And it's automatically a lesser thing. Like the community is lesser.
Yeah.
And I
For
don't know
sure.
if there's a way to get back what we've lost, but that's just kind of what happens is like you just keep trying. I mean, I was wondering like what it was like because we were both on the kind of live Deb tribute show on Beyond the Trailer Park because it was a version. It was like we almost did a time travel. We like went back to the early days where we all like
Yeah.
listened to the same shows and watched the same shows, and we were all felt like more of a community than we might right now. Like, what was that like for you?
Uh, you're right. Um, because we all came out of Atheists on Air, right? Like there was that core group that we all began listening to Scathing Atheist and Cogdis about the same time, and then Atheist on Air came along, which was the live call-in show that really like brought the community together, right? So like you had Scathing and Cogdis or like the headlines and cool interviews and providing a platform for other podcasters to get the word out there about their show. But then there's no reciprocation when it comes to those shows. But Atheist on Air was fundamentally different because it was a live show. It was 7 hours every Monday night, and there was always the chat going crazy. There was always people calling in, and the segments were fun. The science with Professor Steven, the Pastor Roy stuff. I don't know how else to say it, and this is just through my own perceptions, and it's probably flawed, but I'm going to go for it. It felt like a simpler time when it was happening, and
Yeah.
also when we were all together there again on the memorial show for Deb. It felt like we were all going back to that simpler time. And, you know, the world is always crazy. The world always has a lot going on with it. We're all, you know, we're all leading our own lives. We're all doing our own things and our own projects and everything. But, you know, I think that there's this fallacy that our memories commit, that thinking that yesteryear was a simpler time when really it was just as complicated as it is today, but maybe we just didn't know as much as we do about reality now. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know how to understand that better, but you know, that's what it felt like. It felt like going back to those good old grassroots days. It felt simple again. It felt it felt like we were part of the I'm not going to say brotherhood or sisterhood. We were part of the peoplehood again, and getting all together as that initial core group of atheists on air peoplehood. It just felt good. How did it strike you? How did you feel with that night?
I mean, that's the thing. It's like you say, "Oh, I wish I could go back to those kind of early days where it all felt together." But it's like, yeah, but then I lose everything that's happened since. And yes, there's some
Right.
bad things that have happened. We've had people that we really loved and felt close with who have made weird turns. And of course, the reality of our politics we have right now isn't great. And there's this strange pivot that you feel like you have to make when you do like an atheist podcast. You're like, I can't talk about God and religion anymore. We've already settled that. And
Yeah.
then you meet people in real life. I got to go to a local atheist meetup, and Atlanta local meetups tend to be old white people. But this time, Mandisa Thomas was talking, so the Black non-believers, some of her people with that were there. So it was actually a true gathering of a very diverse group of people, which is not usual in our circles. So that was refreshing, and it was just to like, there are real issues that are going on, people are dealing with, and they have to like I don't know, maybe some of us have the privilege to kind of like let it go, like we can pass as normal people. But people
Oh,
have to deal with these problems constantly, and now that you're aware of them, you don't want to go back to the time that you weren't. But it also does complicate literally everything you do. You become, woke is a terrible word, but you gotta like look back at stuff that you liked, pop culture stuff, and go, ooh, problematic, and but that's just what happens. You change, you evolve. Evolution is a thing. It's a theory, but it's a thing.
yeah. Um, the thing is when all of that was beginning, you know, 5 years ago, if we're talking about the halcyon days of 5 years ago, of the time frame that we're currently discussing, like it feels like a simpler time, but also I was so much more ignorant of the world around me, then that's probably why it felt simpler. And you use the term woke, and that's so loaded, right? Because everybody uses that term to say that the world is more like what they think it's like, right? But becoming more aware of the world around me and learning more about the world around me, spending more of my time learning instead of spending my time spewing nonsense as I did before. That, like, I don't want to go back towards ignorance. I don't want to regress in my own personal mental evolution, because that's, I mean, I don't want to be dumber. Right? Like, I don't know anyone who aspires to be dumber than they currently are. And I don't think that that's a good trait. I don't know anyone who says, you know, I'm exactly as I was when I was 6 years old and says that that's a good thing, except for our president, right? I don't know how to like reconcile those ideas of like reminiscing about a simpler time 5 years ago and also realizing that I was just dumber 5 years ago. I just had less information in my head. I just had less critical thinking skills and tools to work with 5 years ago than I do now. And sure, the world seems more complicated now. Sure, I feel more informed, and the world, in many ways, politically speaking, it seems like the world is on fire every second. But also, it's like that's how it's always been. And you know, like I would much rather be abreast of those concepts and those phenomena instead of just burying my head in the sand about them. So while we can opine and think about a simpler time when we were not as smart as we are now, or we didn't have as much information in our heads as we do now, like, I still appreciate that I'm smarter than I was right now. So I don't know how to reconcile that other than just strive to continue to be smarter, even if that means that the world is going to be more complicated.
Yeah, there's nothing, I don't know. There's almost this thing like, oh, I finished college, I got my degree. Okay, I'm done learning. It's like, not really. Like
No.
it's good to learn. It can be painful and annoying, but it usually ends up getting you in a better place. I don't know if the world gets in a better place, but being aware of things and not being constantly pissed off is maybe a good thing. But around the last time we talked, you were on, you had a great talk with Chris, aka Podunk, about politics. So do you still consider yourself a conservative, and maybe define the term, since it's kind of a dirty term now?
Yeah. So the term that I was using then was conservative, as not as the political buzzword as it is today, but more as a philosophy of conservatism, of conserving things as they are, of conserving the world around us. And I think I went on a spiel of like, I want to conserve the environment in a way that will allow me to breathe clean air. I want to conserve our educational institutions in ways that will allow our kids to be, on par with the rest of the world's, the rest of the Western world's education systems. So as far as me claiming to be a conservative, that doesn't fall within the definition that anybody uses the term today, because I also fall in the sense of liberal in most of my political leanings, because liberal progressivism tends to have us in a way, or tends to, I think, move society in a more moral direction. And part of a progressive liberal idea has to have an element of conservatism, of conserving the things around us. So I don't know. Like, I think that might be just my foray. When I talked to Chris, that might be my way of making a foray into the world of, well, I'm not a declared Democrat or Republican. I'm an independent voter. But my policies and my ideas happen to align with one party or the other, because I think that I don't know. I think that probably describes most of us, if not all of us, and therefore, if it describes all of us, then the description holds no definition whatsoever. So I don't know. It's an idea of like being conservative about things that are worth conserving, and also progressing in spheres where progress is needed. And it's one of those things where it's like every issue in politics, it requires a nuanced conversation instead of just a buzzword of you're a conservative or you're a liberal. Like it requires nuance to understand the subject.
Nuanced discussion. We're on YouTube, man. Come on.
I can't wait for the comments section. Yeah, right.
Oh, there will be nothing. I'll probably be reaching for another beer in a second, so I may disappear for a moment. But I wanted to do, this is sort of an out of context quote, but this is from the interview with Chris. They're worthless, dickless, fuckless pieces of worthless shit. The Democratic Party hasn't done shit. Do you still feel like now, because this was an interview around the time Trump had just been elected, about kind of joining the Republicans because they know it'll win, or now that the Democrats have a little bit of momentum?
That is so out of context. And Chris said that, right? I didn't say that.
I think you said that. Yeah.
Did I say that? Shit. Wow. No. Yeah. Like I'm actually, it's totally out of context. But the sentiment is true, right? Because Republicans, the conservatives, as they are labeled today, will do goddamn anything to win. They will rig elections. They will, collude with foreign powers in order to win an election. But that's something that apparently progressives are incapable of doing. No, it's not true. Because progressives do the same thing.
Kind of cheating, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the thing is like, it's a game. with a set of rules. Everybody cheats at it. It so happens that Republicans cheat harder and better and more effectively. So if they are able to like be more effective at winning this bullshit game that we've constructed, and then maybe their platform, well, no, because that's ignorant to say. Maybe their platform could be shifted if we just, work to change their minds. No, fuck off. That's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
So like there's the thing is this doesn't like there is no simple answer to this, right? Of if you play the game harder and you cheat at the game harder, then you win. But at what cost? Are you selling out your morals just so that you are elected to the position and you therefore have the power for 2 to 8 years, right? Or if you're a justice for your entire life, which that's cool.
Oops.
Yeah, exactly.
Is he from Colorado? Because he used to live in Colorado.
Yeah.
It's the only connection I have.
Yeah, I think Gorsuch is.
And he's like my age and he runs marathons. No biggie. He's good.
Yeah, it's cool. It's all right. Yeah. We're going to die before he does. So that's awesome. So, yeah, like I don't know. There's no easy answer, right? And I think the simple assessment of it is the entire political system is so fundamentally broken in so many ways. And the fact that we don't have any simple solutions just reveals how complex the system is to begin with. And knowing that there's no simple solutions to these problems makes it even more frustrating when you're trying to come up with the solutions, right? So in Washington State, we have this thing where the state is trying to decrease the influence that large corporations and large donors have on local elections, and the way they're doing this is through voting vouchers, a voucher system, where basically because our election system is basically completely run by whoever has the most money and can buy the most posters and airtime, they're going to win. The way that the state is trying to circumvent that system is by creating these voucher systems. So the voucher system is the state sets up a fund that has a finite number of vouchers, a finite amount of dollars. And if you get a certain amount of voters to sign their vouchers over to you as a candidate, then the state deposits X number of dollars that's equivalent to however many vouchers you have into your campaign account. So it's a way of kind of publicly funding an election system. But the thing is you have vouchers with a small amount of money competing with lobbyists with infinity monies. And you're trying to use this little tiny system in order to try and subvert a massive system with so much power and so much money, right? It's a step in the correct direction, but it is not a fix, right? So like that alone of the state trying to undermine corporate power in politics reveals how much nobody has a solution to, or a simple solution, I should say, to the problems that we're experiencing in politics. And I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green Party, whatever. I don't care what party you're in. We're all playing on a playing field with a broken system, and nobody has any realistic fixes that will ever pass in our current political sphere. So, yeah, I mean, we can hold out hope. We can say, yeah, Ocasio-Cortez, her Green New Deal is awesome. It doesn't read like the specific provisions you would expect in a bill. It reads more like, constitutional amendments, which I'm all for that. But, I also don't see it as any sort of rational that anything like it is actually going to get passed, because it's so polarized and it's so divisive and it's so fractured. So, yeah, no easy solutions.
Yeah, that is true. And you think, what has money done to kind of corrupt the church is how much money Mormon church has. And then what has money done to corrupt kind of politics? And there we go. But let's think of happier stuff. I hear you got engaged recently.
Yeah, I did get engaged. It was awesome when it happened. It is awesome. Still have yet. I'm one of those, I guess, typical millennials of like, oh yeah, we got engaged. We'll probably get married in like 9-10 years, whatever. Maybe we'll just stay, engaged forever. But Yeah, so my partner and I, we've been together for longer than I've been doing the podcast, so over 4 years now. And I chased her up here to Seattle. She came up here for school. We met in Colorado, and I moved up to Seattle to come live with her. And it's awesome. It's really, I don't know how being engaged like feels the same, but also feels a little different. And then I hear that once you get married, like it feels completely different. The way that Eli described it to me at QED in Manchester was like, it's like there's this iron core running through the center of you. A Mormon might call it an iron rod. And like everything in your life is like built around that core system, that center where you know that you always have a place to go back to and always have somebody to support you. And it's like, yeah, okay, that sounds awesome. I don't know if that sounds any different than what we have right now, but I'm sure it will feel different when you actually get married. But yeah, so engaged, it's awesome. Very happy about it. And yeah, not sure when we're going to get married.
Now we'll see if this is where things go horribly wrong or not. But
Okay.
on the video, you can see and you can hear Bryce, but you cannot smell him. Where did this whole "you smell like soup" thing come up in the puzzle verse?
Nice talking to you, Zach. Nice talking. See ya.
Last time. See? I did it. I broke the Bryce.
Once again, Eli. Okay, so I have this theory, and it comes from studying Joseph Smith incessantly all day, every day, and trying to understand the mindset that leads a person there, that leads a person to be able to just spew nonsense and never have it questioned and just have people embrace it as reality. So that is my way of saying I think Eli is an atheist cult leader, because he has that charisma and that power to just spew bullshit and people will glom onto it. Bullshit about, brownies may or may not have been, laced with something. Bullshit about the way that I may or may not smell, which everybody who actually has seen me and interacted with me in person says that I do not smell like soup. It's fake news. Thank you very much.
I don't even know what soup, like, smells like exactly.
I don't know. See, that's the thing is,
two reason cons. I cannot say, what is it? French onion soup might smell, but like what's it? Usually
the
soup
problem is
kind of smell. I don't know.
It's not, the assertion isn't tethered to any reality except for the reality that exists in Eli Bosnick's mind. And he is a cult leader. So, yeah, there's no foundation for it. Eli is he is going to be the David Koresh of the atheist skeptical movement. I just want everybody to know that. Just be aware, if Eli Bosnick offers you Kool-Aid, I don't recommend you drink it, for many reasons. And just maybe one day this anti-truth will die. But it's done a lot of damage. It's divided our community a lot. So I just want you to know, Eli, your assertions, they do real harm. They do real harm, man. They hurt.
Real harm. So what's new? Like every time I have you on, you got a new big project coming up. So what's happening in the we'll just call it the Bryceverse?
Yeah.
Podcasts in the near future.
The cool thing about big projects is they're really easy to start, but a lot harder to finish. So right now I am currently in the midst of editing, or in the final editing phase of a paper that I'm writing for a psychedelics journal that is discussing the history of psychedelics in early Mormonism and to what extent Joseph Smith may have been using them in an entheogenic context in order to create these visionary and spiritual experiences for the Mormons. So that's still kind of that's up in the air as to when, which edition of the journal that will be going into. But all of the people who are authors of it, we all kind of resoundingly agree that it's in, about 95% phase. So all of the hard work is done except for the final, peer review and editing phase of it. So that's kind of the biggest project that I have going on right now that has been robbing a ton of my time. but it's been really fun and also really rewarding because this is going to be my first, peer reviewed academic journal paper that's ever been published with my name on it. And that's exciting. That's something that I'm really looking forward to having because I've self-published before, but never through an academic journal. So that's what's going on in my life lately.
I was like, peer review, that is not the kind of thing that gets you popularity in the atheist community.
No shit. Yeah.
I think having the less backing for what you say tends to help you, but I feel like it's a short-term thing. So hopefully long-term, this does help your career because it is good to talk to people who make a living doing this, or at least make part of a living doing this, because we need more activists, seeing Mandisa Thomas, like she's doing full-time activism, and that needs to be supported because there aren't many of us out there. So
right, that's true.
List my beer to you, well, just because I have a beer. See, that's important. Okay, before we get to the self-pimping, now right. I've kind of totally thrown it away, and I'm sorry, Jeannie and Deborah, but I've kind of tossed the whole like make the guest tell a joke thing because it's not necessarily about the joke. It's more about, can we get to know this person who does a podcast? So if I've only been to Seattle once, but if I came to Seattle again and you were my tour guide, what would you show me so I could see the real Seattle?
Ooh. I bet you would like this a lot, actually. There is a place that is down in the International District, and it is a pinball museum. And it's pretty small. It's like a little hole in the wall, just in, kind of a long, skinny building amidst, kind of like a strip mall sort of thing. But they have pinball and arcade machines through the entire evolution of all of pinball. And you get to play all of them with unlimited tokens. So you just walk up to one of these machines and they all have like placards on them that tell the history of the machine, who made it, what generation, what era it's from. And you start like the earliest ones are from like the 1910s and 1920s. And you can play on these old, century old pinball machines. And then you get to see the evolution of them through like the 40s and the 50s. And then it's really cool because you get to see in the like the 80s and 90s as like pop culture was beginning to diversify a bit more. You get to see like movie themed pinball machines really start to take hold, and like really unique ones start to come out. And it's really cool. Alien themed ones, Star Wars themed ones, and all of these themes that start coming out in the 80s and 90s. And then you get to play like the most new age, awesome, like sci-fi pinball machines that are like, a holographic pinball, not really, but like the coolest, most state of the art pinball machines that, that are just prototypes now. And it's cool because you get to see like the little history of them and everything. But there's just a door charge. You just walk in with a door charge, and all of them, you just press the button and it loads up the ball for you. And the best part is there's a bar there, and every single pinball machine has a drilled in cup holder. So you just go in here, you spend as many hours as you want playing pinball and drinking beer, and it's glorious.
Yeah, I think about 10 years ago, the wife and I went to Seattle and Portland, did a little tour, and like every day we were in Seattle, it was like, all right, we're going to lunch, we're going to a brewery.
Hey, there's enough of them.
Yeah, I can't remember if Seattle or I think Portland actually technically had like more breweries per like capita. I mean, Georgia's kicking up. We're up to like 90 or something in the state, which is not bad. Right. There's plenty. There's plenty of choices. But I like the old pinball games. I remember like I think it's like Pac-Man 3, and it was a combination of like the game, and then you played a pinball game on the bottom.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's just so many of those. There's a local place in town that has a bunch of games, and there's one in Nashville that I've gone to, and they have a nice beer selection, and it's all the games. And you go in and you're like, wait, do I put quarters in? They're like, no, all the games are free once you get in the door. I'm like, oh, cool. Right. So,
which is that's like the only way to do arcades instead of throwing quarters and everything. Just like a door charge, you go in. That's like the adult way to do arcades. It's the best, the absolute best.
I mean, there was a sports bar I went to, and they had a South Park pinball game, and I threw all kinds of money in that thing.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that was a lot of fun. The good old days. But man, we've passed our time. So before we call a night, we say Bryce is awesome. Of course, we know this. But where can people find just 3 shows? So he's still an amateur, but he's working on it.
Yeah. Well, Zach, I want to say thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure to talk and hang out with you. People that can find me if you're wanting to hear Mormon scripture, that's My Book of Mormon podcast. If you're wanting to hear Mormon history, that's Naked Mormonism. If you want to hear Mormon headlines and headlines outside of Mormonism, then we end every episode with a good news segment to make it feel like the world's not actually on fire, even though it sometimes is. That's Glassbox Podcast, where we do headlines, and then we also try and do a deep dive on topics that are kind of attached to one of the headlines coming in or out of the church. So yeah, and then on Twitter, Naked Mormonism, Glassbox Pod, Facebook, same thing, or Google's a great way to find things. So yeah, pretty easy to find me, or just type in Blanken with an N. You should it should just autofill. If you are a part of the community, your browser will be like, oh, Blankenagel, that weird name. Yeah, it should find me.
Especially if you're looking for porn. So yeah, there you go.
You know, Zach.
Well, thank you.
See his browser settings.
Thank you again, Bryce, for being on. It's been lovely, and I still have beer, so it's a good thing. So
likewise, and of course, I think we can all agree, and I'm glad we talked about it so much. Fat Tire is the best amber ale ever. The one true amber ale.
The chosen beer.
The chosen beer. That is right. The golden beer. No, it was really fun. Thanks, man.